Oh yeah. Oh yeah, it's Tuesday night. Sports Reports is ordered. We here, unlike the missing Bradley Bill. And it goes like this. Yes, you are now listening to the sound of Sports Reports is ordered. And tonight, we got college football playoff semifinal picks. We got some early NFL playoff thoughts. And we got a little bit more than that. We'll get to it. But I'm 2-5. These guitars sound like Parliament. And I got with me, Stephen Gill, born in Texas, raised in VA, representing New Jerusalem. He wants all you candy-ass jabronis out there to know that the state of New Jersey has been providing all the mud for all the baseball teams for the last 77 years. So any baseball you see thrown in a game, it was dipped in mud from New Jersey. And if you look around places like Yankee Stadium, Tampa, all across the major leagues, their infields, mud from Jersey. Don't bring feelings to a backfight.
Don't do it.
Let's get this underway. Like, review, subscribe, share, break, do all the free things. Do all the good things. Mr. Logical. We've been talking about this for as long as we've had a show.
Yeah,
we've been watching
early topics.
We've been watching other people talk about it since before we had a show. You know, the NFL came up with the Rooney Rule, you know, where you got to at least interview a black candidate. So now a lot of times when you see these news clippings, it's like, oh, they're interviewing a black coach. It must be the Rooney Rule. And it's sad because the reason that we even have to say that is because Jared Mayo didn't even get to put shampoo in his hair before he got fired after the game against Buffalo that he won, by the way. I mean, granted, Buffalo didn't play their starters, but still, you know, saying the Raiders out here gave it the good old effort and try. And Antonio Pierce went out and did a press conference. They asked him, is your job on the line? And he said, not that I've been told. And little did we know, he got fired today. And then,
I don't mean to laugh. It's just the BS because they made him wear the Raiders jacket.
Yes, sir. What up, Residente? And then, of course, you know, Rand Carthon, the GM of the Tennessee Titans, out after 2 years. So what does it take for a black man to keep his job in the NFL these days?
I don't know, man. I let's not be hyperbolic here. Let's be realistic.
No, I'm being real. That was a real
white
question.
Coaches are getting fired at a rampant clip too. The black coaches do seem to consistently only get 1 year. It's happening a lot. If you go back to Steve Wilkes, you go back to Lovie Smith. This year, Gerard Mayo, Antonio Pierce technically got 1.5 years, but
Agreed.
1 year as the the head coach. Short of it being deliberate, like, hey, this person isn't my type of person. I don't know if it's a race thing. I don't know if it's a class thing. I don't know if it's a business connection thing that makes these guys make these decisions. And we talked about it in our pre-meeting. We'll get a case in point like a guy like Gerard Mayo. Gerard Mayo is 17 years in the New England organization as a player and a coach under Bill Belichick. Nepotism has Robert Kraft's son in the mix in the decision-making process of the family business, which is New England Patriots. I imagine that in conversations about going forward as a football team, the player, coach who's played football probably since he's 8 years old, in conversations with the Nepo baby, probably weren't, on the up and up. So I imagine that the tone of the conversation is I know what I'm talking about because I'm the co-owner, I'm the co-president, or whatever title Daddy gave him. I saw Robert Kraft at the roast for Tom Brady. I don't think his health is on the up and up. I mean, obviously at 80 something, you're going to be on the decline, but I think his is an accelerated decline.
especially if they took his spas from him.
But like he looked a little sick in the roast. Whenever they recorded that roast, he looked like he was moving a lot slower. He looked like he was like post stroke, post heart attack, kind of like just movement or just getting old. So the son's probably taking up a lot of that, taking that mantle. And I think Gerard Mayo's like, yeah, like what are you talking about? Like you don't know what you're talking about, and he's probably thinking like, well, I'm gonna go get a patriot guy, a real patriot guy, a guy that will, shut up and coach if necessary, in Mike Vrabel, because I think that's their prime candidate. They're gonna jump through all these hoops to get all those other people, but Vrabel means the most to New England of all the candidates that are out there that are available. And I think Antonio Pierce is in the same boat. People got to forget that Davis got his team because his dad died.
Right.
And we talked about it in the pre-meeting. The fact that his haircut looks like that, and like I know it just sounds superficial, but the fact that his haircut looks that poor is evident that he doesn't have people in his circle that really give him direct advice. Because like no one would tell you to keep getting your haircut like that. People tell you like, yo, this you look a little odd. Like if you had a real person in your corner, a real OG, they would tell you like, yo, this is not a good look. So when it comes to firing coaches, he hired John Gruden, 10-year, $100 million deal. I don't know how many coaches were tenured at 10 years when John Gruden signed that. And John Gruden had gotten fired from other coaches and had other scandals going on, and you gave him 100 million, end up having to break bread with him. Then you hire, then you had the interim coach come in, Rich Bisaccia. You don't hire him. You hire Josh McDaniels. You fire him, so you're still paying
Who
him.
damn
Then you
sure
hire
shouldn't have had a job after that
he
stunt with the Colts.
he shouldn't have been hired after the stunt with the Broncos with the cheating. And then the subsequent stunt with the Colts when he went back to New England, and then he gets a job, and then you fire him, so you're still paying him. So you hire Tony Bush. So it's like if he had any quality people in his corner, they would tell him like, "Yo, you got to get out of the way. You got to hire a real GM. Don't hire some guy off TV because he hired Mike Mayock off of TV. Had to fire him. It's like you need to hand over the football operations to someone who knows football." Not just because you're a nepo baby and you think you can call the shots.
And with the Patriots, I don't know if they're just counting Super Bowls and they're like, hey, Mike Vrabel won 3 of these things and you only won 1. But when I go back and look at it, you know what Bill Belichick's record was the first year with the Patriots?
I imagine it was probably something like 6-10,
He was
5
5
and
and
11.
11. He was
Yeah.
5 and 11. And not only that, he was coming off of 36 and 44 as the Cleveland Browns head coach. So when I look at, Mayo, you're a New England guy through and through. You know what I mean? And if they're going to treat you like this, there's no hope out there for a lot of these black coaches. Like I know that they're saying Brian Flores is going to take every interview that he can get. I know Patrick Graham, the defensive coordinator for the Raiders, is going to interview for a bunch of jobs. I've seen Byron Leftwich's name mentioned with the Patriots. I've seen Pep Hamilton mentioned with the Patriots. And I mean, obviously, like you said, we know Vrabel's the guy. And that's kind of the thing that, because if you go back to Brian Daboll when he got the Giants job, remember the whole confusion with that?
And
Belichick,
like text the wrong Brian.
yeah, he texted Brian Flores and was like, "Congratulations, XYZ," and then it was like, "Oh, I
Flores
texted
still
the
had
wrong
an
person."
interview. And Flores
it was
didn't
before
do
he
his
had the
interview
interview.
yet.
Yeah, and so that
And
shows you
people
right
ignored
there.
that.
That shows you right there that the Rooney Rule is just cosmetic more than anything else. You know what I
Lipstick on the
mean? You
pig.
have to do it. Like, and if they didn't have to do it, it'd be even worse than what it is right now. So when I look at somebody like Brian Flores and I'm like, hey, look at what he's doing with that defense in Minnesota. You know what I'm saying? They're not very good when you look at the numbers per se, but teams are aware that they're playing a Brian Flores defense when they play the Vikings.
It's
You,
timely moves, in-game adjustments. He does confuse quarterbacks. Um, I think I look at it like this. when Bill Belichick, Bill Parcells, Jimmy Johnson, all these guys back in the day were getting their jobs, the expectation was coach, quarterback, teams, draft picks. Everybody kind of grows for a couple of years, and then you see what you have. And we talked about this before with Matt Ryan and Joe Flacco. When Matt Ryan and Joe Flacco started as rookies in 2008, and Matt Ryan came out first pass through, you didn't see that on the wall?
No, I didn't.
I thought you put up there on purpose. But yeah, when Matt Ryan threw his first pass and it was a touchdown, and then Joe Flacco inherited that Baltimore defense and then led him to the playoffs, and then he was playoff Joe. It changed the timeline for the quarterback. Subsequently, that changed the timeline for the coach because if you get the quarterback right, whatever coach you have in there will look like a good coach. Miami looked like a great team when Tua was healthy and he was running Mike McDaniel's system. As soon as you had to put in Skylar Thompson or Snoop Huntley or anybody else, it doesn't look the same. So if you're a guy like Antonio Pierce, you're starting off with a guy like Skylar Thompson. So you can't even get to the point where you can develop a good looking offense. And then you got Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell. And then if
They
you
don't
go
even
with
have good running backs.
they let their running back go. They traded away Devontae Adams. They could have. They knew last year when like I said, we talked about this. When the receiver documentary came out on Netflix, they knew then they should have traded Devontae Adams. Like whenever they saw that, I don't care how it was edited, how it was cut, if it was taken out of context. He said a statement like, "I'm out here about to lose my life because of the way Jimmy Garoppolo was throwing him the ball." At that point, you knew Aiden O'Connell wasn't going to be better than that. You could have traded him before the draft, got a couple more assets, and being like, "Yeah, we're gonna go fully young and develop." That might have bought him some time.
But see, and that's the problem though, right? Because you got Gardner Minshew, Aiden McConnell, you had Jacoby Brissett starting the season because he was a former Patriot too. So you finally put Drake May in. You know, he was as good as advertised, you know, especially for a guy that didn't even start the season. So you look back at it now, you bring in a Mike Vrabel, the Raiders hire whoever they're going to hire. You got more draft picks now. You're going to make some trades or whatever. Maybe if you're New England, you go out there and get T. Higgins or something. And then Mike Vrabel goes 8-9 next year, 9-8 next year, and he's the toast of the town. And it's like, well, we might have done that under Mayo too if we would have gave him this same type of roster, the same type of upgrades. But when I look at Rand Carthon, he is the one that is the most egregious to me. Because when I look at him, like you fired your last GM because he traded AJ Brown, you know, or like that was one of the main reasons. And he never
Yeah,
upgraded the quarterback position. You know, you were stuck with Ryan Tannehill. Even though you got to an AFC championship game, we knew that Ryan Tannehill wasn't a quarterback or Super Bowl winning quarterback. So
correct.
so Carthon comes in, he drafts Will Levis, and it doesn't go so well. He played okay last year, but this year he didn't take that next step.
He played okay
And
in one game against a very poor defense when he threw 4 touchdowns against Atlanta. For the rest of the time, he was subpar, and he was not good. He was not a good draft pick. I think they were enamored. I talked about this last time we were on the show. I think they were just enamored with how he looked. He looked the part. He never played the part. He just looked the part.
but even if you look at this offseason, they killed the draft last year. You know, they went out and got J.C. Latham in the first round to help their offensive line, to help out Peter Skoronsky, who they got the year before. You know, so you're addressing the line. You went and got a center in free agency that had only given up 2 sacks in his career. You know, so the offensive line was coming together since you had a
All
young
American
quarterback.
defensive tackle
You
that
know, you
Atlanta should have
yeah, you
drafted.
went and got Tavondre Sweat. You know, you picked up or you traded for L'Jarius Sneed, you know, for the secondary.
Lockdown corner,
You traded
two
for
Super
Ernest
Bowl rings.
Jones, even though you traded him later in the season for Jerome Baker to Seattle, but you also got a 4th rounder out of that. And then you know you got you know, so you had that. You picked up Tony Pollard, even though that's not a replacement for what's the word I'm looking for Derrick Henry. even though you can't replace Derrick Henry. But Tony Pollard was a good get at a good price.
It's a
You
1,000-yard
know,
guy.
you went out and got Calvin Ridley. And this is like all one off season. You went out and got Calvin Ridley, coming off of the best year of his career, when he was coming off of the suspension for Jacksonville last. So you took him off of his best career year from a division rival. You know what I mean? So you did things, and it's not a 1-year project, because Mike Vrabel was a good coach, regardless of what people might think. He was an actual good coach. Took him to the AFC Championship game, like I mentioned. But we live in this society of what have you done for me lately? This isn't college football where I can go NIL $4 million and get some great quarterback and we're fixed, or we can go to a bowl game now. This is a 53-man roster of the best players in the world. You're not going to make that up in one season. And granted, I thought that they were going to be a surprise team and make the playoffs because I like the moves that they made. You know what I mean? And we talked about it. Week 1 and week 2, they were literally 2 plays away from being 2-0. And if you take their 1-score games, that's an 8-9 team this year.
Your admiration for Tennessee is remarkable, but their quarterback is terrible. Their GM should have kept his job. That's what I was going to say,
especially considering the quarterback
in New Jersey is keeping his job.
But especially considering that the quarterback and Mason Rudolph was your backup, and you were still competitive. They were still in games. Even though you had the head coach cussing out the quarterback, but so back to your point real quick, the Giants, I saw Amara do an interview and they're like, what's your patience level? And he's like, I'm running out of patience, so they better hurry up. And I'm like, you could have fired him. What are you talking about? You could have fired him right now. Don't give them another year if that's how you feel. What up, Mike?
On Mike podcast. Yeah, it's all about, like I said, something we talk about in the pre-meeting, like a lot of, sometimes you get these nuggets, you get this information that flows to your phone, to your algorithm, whatever the case may be. But I saw a clip probably like an hour and a half ago of Henry Cavill plays Superman, and he was reading off some advice that a friend of his got from like an 80-year-old man. And he sent it to the text, so he saved it in his phone. And he read off one line that I want to use now. You said 80% of you doing your job well is your ability to work with other people. So you could be a top performer, but if the narrative is that you don't work well with others, you're gonna lose. You're gonna lose that battle. I know stereotypically Black people in spaces with white coworkers or predominant white environment, like the front office,
like the military.
We've been viewed as combative, but ultimately it's like we tend not to play the bullshit game. Like it's like, yo, I'm not coming in here and kiss your ass because I don't need you as an individual to approve of me. Where I think sometimes when you work in these environments where they are a racial divide and that gap, because it's not 80-20. Once you get into leadership, like I said, I'd go to these meetings and I don't know if race really played a factor in these people's decision making, but if you look around, 14 people at the meeting, 11 of them looked alike. Mm-hmm. 2 or 3 looked like me for the most part. Maybe it was a Hispanic guy, a couple of Black dudes, 10 to 12 white guys, like in a 15-person meeting for the most part. So there is a dynamic there of familiarity. And then when you're not familiar, I think there could be either a deliberate divide or a confrontation at that divide. And like a racial DMZ. It's not like a full-on racial. It's like, yo, I'm not with the bullshit. And I'm trying to let you know I'm not with the bullshit. Like I remember I had a few times when I was in the military, I had to pull people to the side. I'm like, listen, man, this is not the issue that you want to have. I'm like, I don't need you. It's cool. I've been doing this job longer than you. I don't need to be your buddy to succeed here. So don't try to act like because I'm not your buddy, I'm not on my team. I mean, I know what I'm doing. I know more about this than you do.
Well, and I think
I'm not here to be your friend. And I think sometimes that because you have to, sometimes you can't blur the lines. Because some people don't
I think
understand that.
Antonio Pierce.
It's a dynamic that they don't understand.
I think Antonio Pierce, in his specific situation, he had that 2-5 in him. You know what I'm saying? Because we're fortunate. And, I always tell people I treat jobs like I treat cars when I'm at the dealership. You need to sell that car more than I need to buy it. You know what I'm saying? You need to hire me more than I need to work for you. There's 30 companies or more that I could work for that offer what you offer. You know what I mean? But you need me for a specific reason. So I think Antonio Pierce had that attitude because we talked about that where ask Telesco. You know what I mean? Like it was like he was like you said it last week. He's daring the Raiders to fire him, and to some degree, you're right. Like I don't think he wanted to get fired per se, but I think he wanted to push the issue. Like is this my job or not? Where's the leeway? Where's the boundaries? Because like I said, he came out yesterday to do the press conference, and he was like, "I haven't been told this ain't my job." And less than 24 hours later, gone. When the players were the ones that advocated for him in the first place. So now you're spitting in your players' face. So as an organization,
but they're probably gonna move a few of those players. There's probably a few outspoken guys that they were like, But I think the plight of
the company man.
I think Mike Tomlin's in a perfect position because that organization doesn't fire coaches. They're not historic. They've had 3 coaches in the last 55 years.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's like that's a different thing. The Giants have never had a black coach.
Well, the Giants never started a black quarterback until the week that they benched Eli
and they put in Geno
and got death threats.
And I think they still wanted to start the other guy.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing.
It's an odd dynamic, and like I said, I'm not a person that runs the race. I'm like, I don't think, hey, they hate the fact that he's black. I'm not, and he hates the fact that white. I just know that I've lived in predominantly white areas. I've worked in predominantly white organizations, and when I've had a beef with someone, I could tell that there was like this fear. Matter of fact, I'll give you an example. I was in a leadership thing when I was getting promoted to master. In the senior master sergeant, I was going to E7, he was the E8. And he actually said this, and I didn't really think about it. I told somebody else this. He said the most terrified he's ever been in a leadership position is correcting a black woman on her hair. And I was like, I kind of chuckled. I didn't really think about it. Then I said it to somebody else, and they were like, why would that be the case? Like, if this girl's hair is out of regs, this woman's hair is out of regs, then correct her. But like, he said it to the point where it was like a common thing in the room that we all understood. Because I said, I get it, but I get it because I know how, like, I had to deal with, white coworkers who would talk to each other. Like, I literally sent the email once saying, hey, listen, I feel like when I walk in a room, you guys have just stopped talking about me. So do me a favor, just holler at me. Just call me. We could chop it up. No problem. I don't want these this misconceptions going around, and I got to come to this work environment and feel like I feel like I got to walk on eggshells. You know what they did? They got in a tighter circle and started talking. And then, like 6 months later, they're like, "Oh, well, you said this thing." I'm like, "That was a joke." Like, y'all been holding on. I had to have them cornered in the office. I was chewing them out. I'm like, "Y'all been holding on that for 6 months." And that was in July. It's January. Y'all just saying this now, but like, it was like this fear of dealing with, how do I deal with this man if he gets angry?
But Antonio Pierce is, I don't know if he's the perfect coach for the Raiders, but he's the perfect personality for what the Raiders represent.
And when I look to represent, and when I look at it, it's not authentic.
And when I look at Jared Mayo, I would like to think that since he played for the Patriots, so this ain't a guy that Robert Kraft met through somebody else or somebody that he got a recommendation about. You were around this guy for years. So, like, if you can't, and I'm not saying that I don't have any inside sources, but if you can't pull him in an office and just have a conversation, or, like, as a leadership role, owner down to head coach or whatever the case may be, then you shouldn't have hired him in the first place. And that's what I was saying at the beginning of the year, is that Antonio Pierce and Jared Mayo, I felt shouldn't have been the head coaches of those teams. And it wasn't necessarily because I don't think that they don't have the ability to be head coaches. It was just look at these teams. These are the jobs that we get. Mike Vrabel gets the job and it's the same team, but you get the job, when you got Drake May now, you know what I mean? And you got a top 3 or 4 pick. And now you
Vrabel
can
basically
build upon
walks
that.
into two. He walks into 2 years because the narrative is going to be Bill Belichick left the cupboard bare. Jared Mayo didn't build it, and we can't be paying another coach that we fired because more than likely, I'm figuring if I'm Vrabel, I'm going 4 to 5 years on my deal.
Yeah.
So I imagine Mayo's deal was 5 years. So you're paying Mayo because I don't think anybody else is going to hire him as a head coach. Honestly, I don't know what he did as a coach that says to you, "Oh, I think he could get another shot."
Well,
Like
the
a guy
one
like
thing that I will
the
say,
enemy was going to probably get a lot of he was going to get a lot of interviews because you can look at what the Kansas City offense looked like under him.
the
So he
one
was
thing
going to
that I
get a
will
shot.
say is that both teams, the Raiders and the Patriots, they played hard all the way to the end. Like the Raiders just weren't any damn good at all. You know what I mean? Like the Patriots at least had Drake May to where even though they were losing, you were like, look at this, he's gaining great experience. Like this season is going to pay off next year, and maybe year 2 he takes that step and the Patriots become a little bit better team.
Do
With the
you
with the
think
Raiders,
they look?
they were just awful.
You think that the Raiders, because the Raiders drafted what 11 or 12 last year, somewhere in that range, maybe 13
Something like
after the
that.
Vikings. So
Well, they
after
were
the
right
Vikings,
before Denver because everybody was scared. They were scared that the Raiders were going to take a quarterback, and Denver ended up with Bo Nix.
or was yeah. So all the other quarterbacks went McCarthy, Penix, Drake May, Jane Daniels, Caleb Williams. All the quarterbacks were gone. I think if Antonio Pierce was given like, hey, I
Yeah,
think
Denver was 12. They were 13.
so the Raiders were 13.
Yeah.
So I think if they would have told him last year, like, hey, we're gonna hire you as a head coach for going forward next season. This year we're gonna try Jarrett Stidham. I think they had him on the roster.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
See what we have. See if we have any trade bait, and then maybe you lose a couple more games, and you're at 8 instead of Atlanta,
Well, the
and you
moment
can get Penix.
that I reflect on that makes this bullshit for me is was it Christmas last year when they played Kansas City? They won that game in Arrowhead,
Yeah,
with the defensive touchdowns. And after that game, like Antonio Pierce was like, yo, this is what we do. This is the Raiders. You know what I'm saying? Like he was putting his even though he was the interim, he was putting his stamp. Like this is what we do. This is our
yeah,
identity. We gonna come into Arrowhead and we gonna kick the shit out of these guys. And that's Raider football. And I was like, yo, like even though he didn't necessarily have head coaching experience, I was like, look at this, man. Like he's a leader. You know what I'm saying? He's not afraid of the big bad bully on the block. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying? That's a guy that you can build with because you can hire the coordinators and let him grow as a head coach. You can
yeah.
do that just like Mayo. He hired Alex Van Pelt, who was Cleveland's offensive coordinator with Baker Mayfield. So it's one of those things like, oh, Cleveland shouldn't have let Baker Mayfield go. You know why? Because Alex Van Pelt was helping him out. Now, granted, Baker was good on his own, but still, you know what I'm saying? But then he comes to the Patriots. Him and Mayo can't get along for whatever reason. Mayo threw him under the bus. So I think Mayo might have done himself in just by his mouth.
If the Raiders would have finished with 6 wins instead of, I think they probably got
They were 4-13.
no, I'm talking about last season.
Oh, last year.
Yeah. So if they would have said, hey, we're going to give you the head coaching position, let's try some other guys out, improve our draft stock, but showcase the talent we have on our team. I think because I think Atlanta went 7-10. If
And the
they would have
Raiders went
gone,
8-9 last year.
They go 7-10, maybe it's a coin flip, and they're at 8 instead of 12. So now this year it's like, all right, we got Cam Ward, we got Shador Sanders, Carson Beck before he was injured, Quinn Ewers before like this potential $6 million mystery fund is gonna drag him somewhere. I'm thinking probably Oregon,
Maybe Notre
uh,
Dame.
maybe Notre Dame. You had some good quarterback draft picks, and it's like, nope, the Raiders are picking
Brock
6.
Bowers. Oh, you talking about this year?
No,
Yeah.
this year.
And,
So
and,
now
and I
they're
mean,
6.
and
So it's like,
now
yo,
like
2
and
years
now
in a
to get
row,
one of those
we could have
quarterbacks.
got we could have got one of these quarterbacks, and because your
Facts, Mike.
stubbornness, I guess, so your affinity to winning, however you want to define it, cost us this opportunity. So now to move up, who's gonna give you a spot? Who's gonna move you up? New England is New England gonna let you get the
I
4?
would think if there was a team, it doesn't really get you very much. But I
You got
mean,
to get the 2.
it would be Jacksonville, but that doesn't help you.
Yeah, you got to get the 2.
Yeah.
You got to
Yeah.
believe that Cleveland is so financially stuck with Deshaun Watson
And now
that
his and now
they
his,
don't want to
he's having
draft a quarterback and sit him.
and now he's having problems with his rehab. They
Yeah,
said that he's like relapsing or like, he's not progressing. So now you're in a position where you're like, I might want to take a quarterback because yeah, I'm paying him whatever amount of money, but do I want to
but
go
if he's
4
not
and
going to be
13?
here, yeah,
Yeah, so you might want to draft a quarterback too, and sit him out next year anyway, and maybe you take a lesser cap hit the year after because they already did the restructure on his contract. So
yeah. So I
but
imagine that's probably the that was a nail in Pierce's coffin
but
was that.
Carthon is the one. Like I said, Carthon's the one that bothers me because you had to tear it down to build it back up. And as a head coach, I can understand to some degree if you're like, hey, I don't think the philosophy matches our identity or what we're trying to do. You can say that. But as the GM that went out here and made all these moves, can I at least see the moves fail? You know what I mean? Like, can I at
Yeah.
least see if they're going to fail? Can
Well,
I? Yep,
the
I
thing
agree
that
with that, resident. I agree with that, and that's what I was saying about the identity. Like when he made that speech last year after the Kansas City game, he was Raider personified.
Yeah,
You know what
but
I mean?
the Nepo babies don't personify that. Like I was watching Colin Cowherd a few years back, and he was talking about. I think he might have been
When he was
talking
talking
about the
about the two
Cowboys.
titties, I mean two cities,
He was talking about. He said,
that peanut butter skin.
like something like 30 or 40% businesses that get built from the ground up by the parent. Once they're handed down to like the oldest child, they fail because the parents started from the ground up. They built it from the startup to it being worth 10, 12, 15 million
Mm-hmm.
dollars. And then the person who lived off of the benefits of it, when they take over, it doesn't resonate. It doesn't resonate like the desire to make it grow from 15 to 45 million that isn't there because they profited off of this, their whole life. The cars, the vacations, the houses, that's all they know. Whereas the
What?
these other kids are the same way. So with Tennessee, at least that GM can go into another meeting and say, "This is what I did with the Tennessee Titans." So if anybody moves off their GM, I think the Giants probably would have been wise to move off their GM and their coach simply because they're going to get a new quarterback in anyway. I'd rather marry the three of them together versus two lame
But that's
ducks
kind of the problem
in
though with the
GM.
Giants, right? Because when they got Dayball, the whole thinking was Josh Allen had his best season with him. So it was
Yeah,
like
but
we
he
got the
didn't.
quarterback guru.
Yeah, but he didn't. The coach and GM didn't pick Daniel Jones together.
Mm-hmm.
So right now you're in a position where if you're gonna tear it down, tear it down. So give him that lesson, girl.
Why we got to overreact to one game like this?
It. I don't know if you trade for Milton. I think you need to. I mean, if you're gonna give the next guy a couple of years and give it a shot.
Yeah.
I mean, give it a shot. Like you're gonna be behind. You're not gonna win your division for the next
4 years,
4
maybe.
years,
Because
three,
once Mahomes
at
starts
least
slipping a
3.
little bit, you got
Herbert.
Bo Nix and Sean Payton. You
Oh
got
fuck, I forgot about Bo Nix. It could be 3 or 4 years before you're even competing, and you could be in like the way the NFC North looked this year, where it's like if the Bears could have turned around a couple of different games, they would have been in that mix to where you
mhm.
got 3 or 4 double-digit wins, and then the
It would have
Bears
been
kind of
like the AFC North
AFC
last
North,
year.
yeah. So
Yeah.
like you're 3 years away from that minimum, and that's predicated on somebody falling off.
Yeah.
Either they pay Bo Nix so much, which that won't even happen for 2 more years. So
And maybe
the
3.
rate, yeah, so the Raiders, you are in a position where like you're the unique square one. You're at the bottom of the AFC West barrel. All 3 teams ahead of you are leaps and bounds ahead of you. Their coaching staff is better. Their
Quarterbacks all young.
quarterbacks are all
So this
young
ain't Aaron
and
Rodgers
better.
where you're like, hey, in 2 years, he might hit his decline.
Yeah, like you got 3 years before one of them even declines. And if you give Mahomes like some sneaky 6'3" deep threat out of all of a sudden that can like stretch the field, he might be able to like, advance his career more. So there's no
Mhm.
guarantee that you're even going to be competitive. So I would say, make that move, but you got to be locked in and dedicated to the coach that you get. But I don't know if they have that level of dedication because nobody wants to believe that they are a poorly run team when they are running the team.
Hey, Steve, the Bills secondary isn't that good. I don't care how many snaps they played. So, what I'm saying? But of course, we got the playoffs starting this weekend. So, we got some great matchups. Anywhere you look, I can find a good game. You got Baltimore and Pittsburgh. They hate each other. The Steelers have had, besides 2 weeks ago, the Steelers have had success against Lamar Jackson. You got the young gun, CJ Stroud, against Justin Herbert. Can Herbert get his playoff win that has eluded him to this point? Can
Yeah.
CJ Stroud pick up from a bad regular season? You got Tampa and Washington. Baker Mayfield, big play Bake, going up against Jaden Daniels, Mr. Hail Mary himself. You got the Vikings and the Rams. You got the student against the teacher. O'Connell against McVay, and you got a little Brian Flores in there. Is Jalen Hurts going to play? I think he will, but
Yeah.
Jalen Hurts against Jordan Love, rematch from week 1, just like the Washington Tampa game. Then you turn around and you got Bo Nix going up to Orchard Park. And let me tell you now, nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills.
Bills.
But, so Mr. Logical, I just wanted to talk to you and, what I'm saying? Like, get some early playoff thoughts. We're not going to make any picks, but, just like what stands out to you about either these matchups or just in general. And no, James, Mahomes will be 30 in September.
All right. So one thing that stands out.
Who's Q?
Huh?
Who's Q?
Oh, is he back?
No, like he talking about like Q was right. Who's this Q? Like John Q? Like Quincy Jones, rest in peace. It can't be him. I don't know this Q.
Q watching Westworld.
Barbecue?
Q out there. What's that show? Everybody, Yellowstone. Yellowstone night at the Sanders house.
but what stands out to you about these playoffs?
What stands out to me, one thing, first thing is the Rams. I hope the rest was worth it. I just feel like 3 versus Washington.
Hey, watch it.
Instead of like, I don't want the 14 win team with the resurging, quarterback and the dynamic wide receiver when I can get the 11 win team with the rookie. You know what I mean? Like the rookie also with the head coach who was, I wouldn't say he was the head coach of the biggest Super Bowl collapse for sure. And then coming off the defensive effort that he led last year in Dallas, maybe it's in his head. Maybe some of that, matriculates. Maybe that conversation is on different shows besides me bringing it up right now. Maybe that's the conversation that comes up. I just feel like I hope the rest for Stafford was worth it to just stay pat at 4 versus in
Are
lieu
you
of
forgetting
jumping
something,
3.
Mr. Logical? Are you forgetting something?
What's that?
Are you forgetting that before the Vikings went on this winning streak and lost to Detroit this weekend, the Rams were their last loss?
That's cool. But the Rams also have 5 or 4 more losses than the Vikings, and I think it would have just been. I would have personally rather played the rookie under
I
the big
agree.
lights in Los Angeles versus the guy from California who
Or, I
went to
mean,
USC, who
but that
played
guy
like
from
he was bigger
California
than the Rams. He was bigger than the Rams when he was at USC,
and that
and
guy
he's
from
he's gone
California
to
don't got no
Wisconsin.
playoff in his life either.
True, so he has no failures, but he also is on a better team. They score points in bunches. He has the dynamic duo at the wide receiver position. Um, I just I just think that was a strange move.
It was a
Philly
strange
Philly
move.
Philly
Yeah.
might have gotten Philly. I think Philly got unfortunately with Christian Watkins, Christian Watson tearing his ACL and whatever's up with Jordan Love's elbow.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's
Oh yeah,
they
you
got a
would know,
break.
wouldn't you, Mike?
So I like the NFC. I like what I like what Dan Campbell said to Kevin O'Connell at the end of the game when he shook his hands and see you in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I thought that was dope because I think it does two things. One, it gets to the Rams. They've been playing it all week. I imagine since it's been said, it's been a conversation in the building. They won't say it publicly, but if they get an opportunity to play Detroit at some part in this playoff run, I don't know how it's going to stack up. Whether it's NFC Championship game, whether it's the next round, if they do beat Minnesota, I think that'd be a talking point. But I like that he said it because it might fire up the Rams to beat Minnesota,
You
so
could.
he didn't have to
And
deal with them again.
I
So
agree with
I
Steve.
think it was kind of crafty. It probably wasn't deliberately crafty, but I think it could low key become
He
a
probably
crafty
didn't
move.
think it would get caught. You know what I mean? But but like, yeah, I agree with Steve. I mean, McConnell's my coach of the year. So, for me at least, I'm on board with that. But it was weird because when Minnesota played Detroit, it was almost like I was watching Ohio State, Michigan, where it was like you're trying to beat Detroit at being Detroit. Like they went for it on 3 different fourth downs in that game. And in the other 16 games this season, they went for it 10 times. So so it was like, I don't know what point you're trying to prove, but it didn't work anyway.
It's it's the New England, it's the Peyton Manning Kansas City conundrum. We used to see it back in the day when Peyton Manning was out here and with the Colts throwing 35, 36, 37, 40 touchdowns a year. Teams would get in the red zone and
Mm-hmm.
play uncharacteristic. You have a smash mouth team like the New York Jets. They get in the red zone. All of a sudden, now they want to try to go from like kick the field goal, play defense. Hopefully, Peyton Manning doesn't beat you up the seams. Same thing with New England when they were on their run. Same thing teams is currently doing against Kansas City, especially the Chargers over the last few years.
Here's a
So
question. Oh, my bad. Go
but
ahead.
the game was so bad for Minnesota. I think you can just scratch the tape. You just be like, you know what? Like you don't even have to look at it because it was so bad. You could just come up with a fresh game plan because nothing really worked.
Here's
You
a
look at
question
like, hey,
for
none
you.
of this worked, and it's like, boom, all right, we'll scrap that, and then if we play them again, we'll stick to our guns.
Here's a question for you. What's the reaction in Baltimore? And what do we say next Tuesday if the Ravens lose this game to the Steelers?
I can't believe Lamar had that many turnovers because I think that's the only way it happens. He has to turn the ball over. Him personally, because Derrick Henry doesn't fumble. Like he had a fumble early. I
Well,
think it was
he
like his
fumbled
first
in that
lost
loss to
fumble.
Pittsburgh.
And like it was like the first one like 3 years, so it's not a thing that he does. We've seen Lamar not play like
Uh-oh.
the Lamar we love in the playoffs. So
Mike Parker.
they would have to either turn Lamar over, like he would have to go from only throwing 4 interceptions all year. I think maybe 4 or 5, but it was less than 6. He would have to throw 2 this game, maybe 1 goes to the house, and maybe get strip sacked holding onto the ball too long because he doesn't want to run. Like kind of in that game against Kansas City last year, the AFC Championship game, where it's like you you're not the strip. You don't get strip sacked. That's not what happens to you. You're too quick
Mm-hmm.
to get strip sacked.
Yeah.
And fumble the ball, stuff like that. So he would have to do that because if he just plays to their normal standard plans, like it's only so much you can game plan for a guy. Uh, so yeah, it would have to be how did Lamar and the Ravens turn the ball over that much? Very similar to, like I said, the Zay Flowers
But
fumble
sometimes it just happens.
In the AFC Championship game at the goal line. It's like you talk about a game of inches. He was in. Granted, he had the bad penalty, but still he made up for it by diving for the goal line. But
Yeah, and that was one of the reasons that I brought this up because Zay Flowers might not even play this weekend. So that's going to be, it's going to be a Bateman game. Mark Andrews, you might have to throw some
there's
likely
gonna
in
be a
there.
lot of likely and one-on-one matchups with someone. So
Yeah.
either you get likely on the rookie Peyton Wood like that. That rookie's talented. The rookie linebacker from Pittsburgh is talented. Maybe you
Oh,
get it
yeah,
to
my guy,
where
Peyton Wilson.
yeah, you find a matchup to where he has to cover likely out, off the line of scrimmage, just to reduce the pass rush.
Mm-hmm.
Something maybe chip TJ Watt. I keep calling him TJ Watt a little more. They'll figure out something because I think they have enough. Because all you got to do is get
Well, at
if you
least they
get
know
open,
the
Lamar's going
Ravens
to put the
well.
ball on you. Yeah,
You know that they
Lamar's
know
going
the
to put the
Ravens
ball
well,
on
if
you if you
nothing
get
else.
open.
Yeah. So good luck to the Packers, by the way, because let's just say for whatever reason they beat the Eagles next week. Let's just say they do. You got to go to Ford Field, dog. Philly and
They're not
Detroit
afraid.
back to back is nasty, and I
They're
don't
not
want
afraid
no
of Ford
parts of
Field.
it.
That game, the last game at Ford Field, is the reason why I was confident in uh Jordan Love because I watched it on Amazon Prime, but I watched it like I don't know if it's called Madden mode or
The all
game mode.
22.
Yeah, so I watched it from that, and it was a couple of free blitzers up the middle, and he just he kept the ball, kept it tight, and he did a little shoulder shimmy, reset his feet, and threw like a deep crossing route to
But we got to
Kraft,
see
to
how
another
healthy
one
he
to
is
Watson.
because that was his throwing arm that got messed up against Chicago.
Yeah, and it was like it hit a helmet, so imagine it's probably just point of contact pain where it's like how
Yeah,
much can you tolerate?
yeah.
They're
And
used to playing
like
in
I
the
said, we got to
cold.
see if Jalen Hurts can clear a
They're
concussion protocol.
listen, if the concussion protocol is like how we did it for the military, I think it was like ANAM test where you set on the computer and like little images will pop up and it was like click
Yeah,
the button when you see an
yeah.
A or click this, like so you can't really fake
Remember the
it.
pattern.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can't. It's like it was like you can't really fake it. It's just they would just measure your cognitive pre-deployment and post-deployment.
No,
If it's something
honestly,
like
I
that,
would
then
just
he
walk
can't
in.
beat it.
If
But
I
if
was the
it's some
trainer, I would
answers,
just walk into the room and I would say, "What is your name?" And if he says Jalen Hurts, you're good to go. If he walks in that room and he says, "I am Batman," then you ain't playing.
listen. What's your social security number? What state were you born in? If you know that, you got it. Put a helmet on, hand the ball
You
off
know
to
what I'm saying?
26.
That's simple. So I was looking at this and this Washington Tampa game, not just because I'm a Washington fan. I was like, I have no idea how this game goes. Both of the secondaries are just awful. Austin Eckler should be able to make an
They
impact.
made that tackle inbounds to keep the clock running against Atlanta, so their secondary is pretty good.
Nah, man, like No, that was all Raheem Morris. And, so like, but when I look at that game, when I look at this game, it's one of those games where usually you'll say something like, don't let the lesser team hang around because the more they hang around, they build confidence. But it's more like, just make sure that Jaden doesn't end up with the ball with like a minute left. Just make sure that doesn't happen.
Maintain rush lane integrity every third down. If you do that, you give yourself a shot. I'm not saying he can't throw the ball, but I rather, because he's not going to drop the ball in open space while running free because you're man-to-man coverage and everyone ran upfield and he's jogging for a 15-yard gain. If you don't do that, I think you'll be fine. I think
Yeah.
if you don't do that, you got a home game. I imagine Florida's going to be warm, so the weather's going to be good. It's going to be good football weather. If you can maintain good rush integrity, make them beat you from the pocket, don't give them anything easy, you'll be fine. Baker's going to make big plays because I think he's one of those guys that lives for these moments. You saw what he did to Pittsburgh. Skip Bayless' famous line, 8-3 down the stretch of the last 11 games, winning the Pittsburgh game, put 44. Blah, blah, blah. So he does have big playoff in him. He beat Philly last year. So I'm gonna go with the guy. I think they're equally as confident. I don't think Jaden Daniels walks into the game feeling like he, as a rookie, shouldn't be there.
Yes, Jalen Hurts makes Philly better. Like they did just make the Super Bowl 2 years ago. And,
he would have been an MVP.
He could have been MVP if it wasn't for a guy named Patrick Mahomes. So, like, he does make them better. Like, if you got to go into the playoffs with Kenny Pickett, you know what I'm saying? Like, don't plan on being in the playoffs very long.
Or the more missile Tanner McKee,
you know what I mean? But and one last thing before we wrap this up. Many get it off my chest here. Can we please stop with they didn't want the Bengals in the playoffs? Kansas City don't give a damn about no Cincinnati Bengal because of something that happened 2 years ago. How about the Bengals don't lose to Jacoby Brissett? How about the Bengals don't give up 38 points to a rookie quarterback? How about the Bengals make a field goal in overtime? How about the Bengals convert on a 2-point conversion? If the Bengals want to make the playoffs, they got nobody to blame but their sorry ass selves.
Any one of those, and they would have been in.
Sorry ass selves. Like, I don't care that they beat Denver.
They had a great year.
Because you know why? They already had 8 losses when they did that. You know what I'm saying? So they were under 500 coming into that game. And you sit up here telling me that a team that's giving out 30 points every week, damn near, Patrick Mahomes is scared of them?
It was the whole SEC, Ole Miss, South Carolina. Nobody wants to see them in the like. It's the rhetoric. Like I said, I talked about it all the time. People would rather wish for someone else some organization that isn't successful to be successful in lieu of acknowledging a successful organization or a successful person. It's like Cat Williams said, like, your affection to losers is it's not like you or something like that. I think people like that. I think people just like to root for, like people say, they root for the underdogs.
If anything,
these guys aren't fucking underdogs.
But if anything, I would have liked for if I had to play that game, I would have rather it had been Miami. At least I could look back and be like, hey, your quarterback missed all these games. You know what I'm saying? Like, and so like, like Burrow, I can't blame him.
Appreciate it, Mike.
I can't blame him for any of this stuff. You know what I mean? We were talking about it. Like, he probably deserved the MVP vote if they would have made the playoffs.
He's going to get a handful.
But like, that defense is just like pure D shit.
And they had a guy lead the league in sacks.
You know what their defense reminds me of? Deontay Wilder. Anyway,
all right hands.
I'm just saying. But anyway, you know what I'm saying? So we're going to transition from one playoff to another playoff. And guess what? Sorry, SEC, you couldn't get invited. Yes, Texas is here, but they ain't going no further. How about that? Spoiler alert. You know what I mean? But for real, we got a game on Thursday. We got a game on Friday. We got brands. We got Notre Dame against Penn State. down in Miami at the Orange Bowl. You got Texas, even though I just brought them up. They got a home game because they're playing in Jerry World against Ohio State. Now, of course, there's going to be some snow allegedly. Apparently, it's going to snow here in San Antonio on Thursday, too. But apparently, there's going to be like 3 inches of snow up there in Arlington. Not Fort Worth, people. It's Arlington. But anyway, so I'm going to start with Penn State, Notre Dame. This is a game that I've been waiting for a long time because even though I hate both of them and wish the stadium would just open up and swallow them whenever they're on the field, it's one of those things where you're guaranteed almost that it's going to be a good game when they play each other. So you know what Notre Dame and Penn State makes me think of? And I only thought of this because we talked about it so much the other day. It reminds me of J. Cole saying, me looking at Drake as the Spider-Man meme. You know what I'm saying? That's Penn State and Notre Dame right now. This is Mortal Kombat mirror match. Two teams that aren't going to be able to run the ball against each other. You know, it's going to come down to the quarterbacks, but only one of them can throw.
That's going to be tough.
Two defenses that are just out of this world. One that held Ashton Genty from getting the record. So Notre Dame has been playing a lot of man defense this year. I don't think they need to against Penn State because the only thing you really have to worry about is Tyler Warren, you know, my Heisman candidate at tight end.
And he's gonna beat you.
Yeah, and he showed up against Boise. So the reason that I bring him up, for example, he's the leading receiver on the team, even though he's the tight end. 98 catches. 98 catches. The first leading wide receiver is Harrison Wallace at 46 catches. But if you take the two running backs, Katron Allen and Nick Singleton, combine their catches, it's 10 more than that leading wide receiver. So from that standpoint, all Notre Dame has to do is keep Penn State in front of them. Just don't get beat over the top because Drew Aller can take you out. Now, the other thing, Drew Aller doesn't make a lot of mistakes. He doesn't have many interceptions this season. But when does he have interceptions? He has interceptions. I mean, it goes without saying. He has interceptions when he throws a lot.
I mean, I get what you're saying. Like 40 passes,
like
something like that.
Those games that he had like a lot of multiple interceptions in, you know, he threw more than 35 passes. You know,
it's probably because they couldn't run the ball.
He doesn't turn the ball.
It could be. This could be one of those games that, like the Arizona State Texas game being 24-24 going into overtime was probably a shocker. Like it's for the score to be that low. Like, you know, I'm pretty sure the over was over 48 points.
It was 51.5, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, but Texas had like 11 points or something like that. So I think they probably had to score around like 34, 20, something like that. Somewhere in that range, 34, 8, 17, something like that. So this could be one of those kind of games. Because if you can't run the ball, I'll go with Notre Dame has more explosive, like skill players. I think the wide receiver, I think the lack of wide receiver threats for Penn State will eventually do them in.
Mm-hmm.
Because if the defensive coordinator can make any adjustment, like, hey, these wide receivers aren't beating us. He's only looking for Warren. He seems like Warren is the first or second read on most of these dropbacks. These wide receivers aren't beating us. I say we go man on the outside, and then we bracket on the inside and make him either try to make a throw to one of these wide receivers that's in tight man coverage, or he checks it down to Warren on the drag route, so these over routes, like these general, tight end routes, and you just keep everything in front of you. Because I think Notre Dame is going to be able to move the ball around, run the ball well. I think Riley Leonard with the RPO action, because all it takes is one defensive end to read it wrong, and that's a 20-yard gain. 3rd and 1, he reads it wrong. Riley Leonard pops outside, and it's like, now he's jogged down the sideline, steps out of bounds. So you get a big gain, big moment, semifinal game, and you don't get a hit on the quarterback. I think
Mhm.
those kind of things can build up, and I'm liking Notre Dame's opportunities there.
Yeah, so Notre Dame is favored by 2.5. Or I'm sorry, by 2. It opened at 1.5, and the over/under is 45.5. I think we're definitely going under, but this is one of those games where it's the two stalwart defenses, so it'll end up being 34-31.
Yeah,
But
38-34 at the end of the
yeah, it
game.
never
You're like,
fails.
yo,
But so Penn State has been very fortunate in this playoff run. So we were talking about this off camera, where
yeah,
you
who had
asked
the
me who
easiest
I thought
runs?
had the easiest path. I think it's Penn State. You got SMU, and it was at home, and it was sub 40 degrees, and then you got Boise State.
I'm gonna go grab a
Who
water real quick. I'll be right
right?
back.
You got Boise State, who is one of the worst secondaries in the country. They finished the regular season number 126. And oh, by the way, they miss a lot of tackles too. When I look at Texas, they went up against Clemson, and you had Cade Klubnik, who's from that area. So he had the motivation to beat Texas. They had a team that could match Texas's speed. And then we saw Cam Scatterboo, of course, last week with Arizona State. Notre Dame got Indiana, and everybody was like, "Ooh, they got the easy matchup." But then they had to play Georgia. And granted, no Carson Beck, but you still got Kirby Smart in that defense on those sidelines. So I think Penn State has had the easier path. Penn State has also played two teams that beat themselves. SMU, red zone turnovers, a red zone pick six that went the other way. Against Boise, Boise gave up the two big plays early, fell behind 14-0, and just never got back into the game. So Penn State, I don't know how tested they've been in the playoff. And if we don't know anything else about Penn State, we know that James Franklin goes into the shell. He goes into the shell during these big games, right? We always talk about him, something like 4-17 against top 5 teams. So can that change tonight or on Thursday? You want to say yes because you listen to the media and you hear all the time that if the playoff wasn't a 4-team playoff, Penn State would have been the beneficiary because they only lose to Ohio State and Michigan. That's true to some degree. But I think Notre Dame wins this game. I think that their defense is just going to be too tough to penetrate, even though I think Andrew Kotelnicki, the offensive coordinator for Penn State, I think he will have some new wrinkles. I think that they are the team that has the ability to get more explosives, throw more missiles over the top of your head. But I just think Notre Dame's defense is too good. I think they're too well coached. Al Golden, and oh, by the way, Al Golden's a Penn State guy. So, you got that going for you as well. So I think I'm going to go with Notre Dame. I'm going to take the under, against my better judgment. Because, like I just said, when two defensive teams get together, we usually see crazy things happen. The all-time series, 10-10, or I'm sorry, 9-9-1 all-time. So it's going to be a great game. Two storied programs. Give me Notre Dame 20-13.
I like that. I think the score you get 20. I'm gonna go 27-21 Notre Dame. I think there'll be some lapse in
Oh, so you
judgment on
got
the
it
score.
over. Okay.
I just figured, it's a lot of games these guys have played. Someone's gonna make a mistake somewhere where it's like someone's gonna pop a big run.
You,
A
you, you know
linebacker's out
me.
of position.
You know me. I like these coaching things. Like Al Golden played tight end at Penn State. He's the defensive coordinator going up against them. I don't know. I like that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah,
what I'm saying? I'm going to give them the edge on motivation and just James Franklin in big games because I tried to trust him against Ohio State this year. And, we know how that went. But speaking of Ohio State, like I said, they're coming into Jerry World to get them some cow. They're going
they're
to
gonna beat
play
the
the
brakes off of
Longhorns.
Texas.
Mo chicken.
They go
You
beat the
know,
brakes off of Texas.
but there's motivation here as well, right? Quinn Ewers started at Ohio State.
They ain't enough.
Okay, so
Ain't enough motivation.
so Matthew Golden, had a game against Arizona State last week, but otherwise Texas's receivers, and I don't know if it's a Quinn Ewers thing, but for me they've been a little disappointing,
I thought
especially.
his numbers would be better. I think he's only scoring around like 26 touchdowns. I know he missed a couple of games,
Mhm.
but when you
He just
are
doesn't look good.
when you're projected number one, like projected top first round quarterback, and you're playing in college, especially when you're in one of these elite squads. I remember I was talking to my son about this a week ago about Jalen Milrow. Like when you are considered an NFL prospect and you're on a top contending team, like you're on a Bama, a good Auburn team, a good Florida team. When you have like when you're on a good team, you're supposed to look way better than the defense you're playing against week in and week out. Your
Right.
defense is supposed to be the weak link. You're supposed to be out there like Mac Jones. Mac Jones was an NFL quarterback when he played behind Alabama's line. 40 something touchdowns. Granted, he threw 20 of them to Devontae Smith and that one in the Heisman, but so he threw that many touchdowns to one guy. I think Quinn Ewers came into the game with like 26 touchdowns on the season. So
Mhm.
I think he might be closer to like just a good quarterback than a great one. And Will Howard may not be a great quarterback, but he has a great wide receiver. So he can look like a great quarterback, a lot like Mac Jones throwing to Devontae Smith. So I got Ohio State big. I don't know if it's going to be 41-21 big, but it wouldn't surprise me if after the first quarter it's clear that one team is clearly better than the other one, and it's up to
So
Ohio
it's
State to hold on after that.
so Ohio State is favored by 6. The over under 53 and a half. So when I look at this game, I mentioned Quinn Ewers. He started out at Ohio State, before he found his way down to Austin.
No reason for him to go to Ohio State. You're from Texas. Like, why would you even go to Ohio State?
I don't know. But also, Will Howard, on the other hand, has played against Texas 3 times in his career. Because, he's an old fart. He was over at Kansas State previously to this. And in 3 games against Texas in his career, he is 0-3. He is 0-3. But he's 51 of 81, 566 yards, 6 touchdowns, 2 picks, to include 4 touchdowns last year in an overtime loss at Austin. But he didn't have Jeremiah Smith.
Correct.
He didn't have Carnell Tate. He didn't have Emeka Ibuka. He didn't have Quinshawn Judkins. He didn't have Travion Henderson.
Travion Henderson. Like, I'm telling you, like, I didn't think a human can move that fast in shoulder pads. He was so fast on the sideline. And like I said, I think that college football, like the players are susceptible to the missed open field tackle, like because that's all you need. And you get a couple of good blocks up front. You get somebody playing a bad angle and a missed tackle, and it's a 65-yard touchdown down the sideline. I think Ohio State has the weapons to do that everywhere, which then makes the Texas team. Then keep in mind, Cam Scatterbo just had like damn near 300 yards on him, last week, and you
Mhm.
knew where he was going to be. Ohio State has 4 guys that they can do, like like I'm not saying that they have 4 guys that are as good as Cam Scatterbo, but as far as like the wide receiver on the edge, the playmaker on the edge, the
Mhm.
playmaker out of the backfield, they got 2 of those. The wide receiver on one side, they got Jeremiah, and then they got a book on the other side. Then they got Carter Tate in the middle. So it's like, oh, not to mention they got big tight ends running across the middle as well that can make plays. You can't match them up on safeties. I think that tight end comes out of his break, looks like a left tackle when he's running his corner routes.
Mhm. And I brought it up last week. Sark, Coach Sark, he's another James Franklin when it comes to these big games. He almost pissed it down his leg last week against Arizona State.
That dude stays. If that guy stays in the spot where he's supposed to be on that pass, he deflects it. At a minimum, he makes the catch more difficult,
Mhm.
and maybe the guy drops it. And then we're talking Arizona State versus Ohio State.
And it's hard for me because Texas, because I'm the look at the schedule guy, and Texas outside of Georgia played the weaklings of the SEC. So the playoffs might have been the first time they've been battle tested, and the talk coming into the playoff was how great their defense was, and Cade Klubnik was shredding them. Levitt had a great game against. Well, I ain't gonna say great game, but he had a really good game against them. That's a red shirt freshman quarterback, in his first playoff game or any kind of bowl game, postseason, whatever.
Yeah.
And so I don't know how good Texas's defense really is, but what I do know, Mr. Logical, is for all you Travis Hunter fans out there, Texas has the Thorpe Award winner.
You can't cover all three of them.
Johnny Barron and they got Michael Taft back there. So I am looking forward to the matchup of Texas's secondary against these Ohio State receivers. I just think Ohio State's going to win that matchup, but I'm looking forward to it. The one thing that Ohio State can't do, you can't run at Texas. Trying to run up the middle just does not work. So you got to get some of those toss sweeps. You got to get some stretch plays, sideline to sideline. Make them react.
And they have the backfield talent to make those.
And they have the backfield talent to do it. So I'm gonna give Texas. I'm gonna shoot them a little bail here because I know you're talking about, saying Ohio State's gonna pull out the paddle on them. You know what I'm saying?
I just think the first couple of drives, I don't know if Quinn Ewers is, some guys are gonna I think the first drive of the game, Ohio State's getting points. If not a touchdown, I got a big play and probably a touchdown in their first possession. And probably even their second one. I just think they have so much going on offensively that he's gonna get open looks from Will Howard from the quarterback position.
Yeah.
He's gonna get great looks. I think Chip Kelly's gonna be able to call a litany of plays like that scripted 15 plays. I think those are all going to be high quality plays, and they're going to get good looks out of it.
Yeah, I've been waiting for Isaiah Bond all year. I've been picking him on my FanDuel, waiting for him to break out, and it just hasn't happened. Of course, he was the guy that had the 4th and 31 catch against Auburn last year. So I've been waiting for him to make his imprint on these games, and he hasn't to date. And when I look at Ohio State, outside of the first Oregon game, their secondary has held up as well. And Quinn Ewers just doesn't look confident. He looks like one of those quarterbacks that got hit or threw a pick and just never recovered from it. That's what I see when I look at him.
Yanked.
I was going to ask you. I was going to say that.
We talked about that. That's why
Tuesday we're probably going to be in here arguing again because I think we might see a little bit of Arch.
And in that case, I get it because this is win or go home.
Mm-hmm.
This is win or go home. The reason I didn't like it last time because Texas was undefeated. Mm-hmm. You're undefeated. I'm a ride or die with Quinn.
Go down with the ship.
And I'll call the package for Arch because I like his athleticism.
I didn't mind it, but we don't got to relitigate that.
Yeah,
right
but I'm
now.
saying,
this
week, if it's not working, then going with Arch makes complete sense because it's lose and go home.
Right.
It's not the same as, like I said, when earlier season you're undefeated. This would have been your first loss. Maybe you could have clawed back in, but this one I don't understand. But I think that's another piece of it. Is he knows definitively he could be replaced.
Right. So
Will Howard's not going to the bench.
So we both got Ohio State. We both got Notre Dame. It sounds like so. That's our national title game pick. So real quick before we get out of here, I just want to share with y'all. There are 2 things that piss me off in this world like no other. Number one is when I come upstairs and then my wife be like, "Can you get me a water?" And I'm like, "Yo, I was just downstairs." The second thing is preseason rankings.
They're not going anywhere.
So I was looking at, going through my stuff. I was looking at On3 the other day, and they had their 2 early top 25. And I mean, obviously, it's beyond too early. So what I wanted to do was I'm going to give the top 10 real quick, and then I'm going to just talk about a few teams. Since I guess that's the thing to do, I'll give a few teams that I'm looking forward to watching next year. So taking it from the top, according to On3, number 1 for the 2025 season, Texas. Arch Manning. Number 2, Oregon. You know who Oregon quarterback going to be next year?
Quinn Ewers.
Oh, well, You know, if the season started today, you know who Oregon's quarterback would be?
Oh, the young boy from UCLA.
Yes, Dante Moore. You know what I'm saying? Number 3, Ohio State. Number 4, Penn State, because you know Drew Aller's coming back. Number 5, Notre Dame. Number 6, Georgia. You ready? Number 7, South Carolina. Number 8, Clemson. Number 9, Florida. Number 10. You ready? Number 10,
Alabama.
the Auburn Tigers.
Get out of here.
You know what I'm saying? Which they got 2 quarterbacks to choose from, Jackson Arnold and Ashton Daniels, you know. So Florida, I get they're going to get the hype, right? Because it's DJ Lagway year 2. Where's Michigan? Where would Michigan be? You know what I'm saying? Oh, my bad. They should be in front of Auburn at least, right? Since they at least beat Alabama. I see where you going with that, Mike. But but a few teams that I was looking forward to next year, and that is one of them, Michigan, because of Bryce Underwood. You know, I can't wait to see him. You know, but Washington, I'm interested in seeing the Washington Huskies because, you know, of course, they picked up our guy, friend of the show, Eric Bieniemy, as their offensive coordinator. You know, but I also like Jed Fish, you know, the head coach. I brought him up last year. He's one of my favorite coaches in the country, even though he's a stinking Gator. And they picked up John Tate Cook from Texas, who got to write the check with his ass that his mouth wrote when he was shitting on Quinn Ewers the other day, you know, because he was down at Texas, and I guess he feels Quinn Ewers ain't shit, but, you know, join the club, buddy. BYU, you know, a team that I thought should have had more playoff consideration this year. We talked about it when the playoff rankings came out. They won at SMU, and I felt like they had, you know, what's the word? They had a better resume than Texas and all that kind of stuff like that. You know what I mean? And they're bringing everybody back just about. And then my last few teams real quick, you know, Indiana, you know, I want to see them react. You know, obviously North Carolina with Belichick. Michigan also picked up Justice Haynes and Jordan, and they got Jordan Marshall. Texas Tech has the number 1 portal class. Colorado, Caden Salter from Liberty. And then last but not least, Malachi Nelson, you know, who got beat out by Maddox Matson at Boise, going down to Texas El Paso, a.k.a. UTEP. And Jaden Rashada going to end up on his 4th NIL team. We just don't know, or team, we just don't know who it is yet. But he is Mr. Logical. Do not bring feelings to a fact fight. You know what I'm saying? I am 2-5, better defense than the Bengals and Deontay Wilder. So we will be back on Friday with NFL playoff picks, reaction to Notre Dame and Penn State. Like, review, subscribe, share, rate, do all the free things. Do all the good
things.
Love you. Peace, people. Oh.